Hi, my name is Laurel Ruma. I'm with O'Reilly Media, and today we are talking to Jess Mink, who is the Vice President of Technical Product at Call9. Call9 is a telemedicine startup that connects patients in emergency situations to doctors on demand. Hello, Jess.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us today, and we're going to be talking about what it's like to be a new manager and, of course, the path that you took to become a manager and where you are in your career. So I guess we'll start there. What really is your role now at Call9?
Sure. My title is a VP of Technical Product, but what that means on a day-to-day basis is that I'm responsible for making sure the software part of the business supports our primary mission of patient care. So that means determining what we should build, in what order, what exactly that should look like, working with the design team, working with the engineers, as well as the whole clinical side of the company.
That sounds really interesting. So how did you actually get on your path to management and where you are now?
Sure. In my second job or third job, depending on how you count, I realized that the software is very ephemeral. Companies come and go as well as product lines. But if you're able to help influence people and help them be better at their job, that has a much longer impact. So that combined with kind of an ability to read an organization and try and debug it like a piece of code led to me starting to informally mentor my peers and eventually becoming a tech lead. The next job I looked for a job that was open to bringing up new managers and made those intentions very clear with my manager. So after that experience as a tech lead, I spent some energy on my next job search, making sure that the company I was going to is one that was willing to train and grow managers internally and had a lot of support for them. And I made it very clear to my manager there that that's the path I wanted to go on. I spent a lot of time reading management books. I set up an entire company mentoring program as well as informally mentored my peers.
How important was that, like, to be so deliberate in your actions? Were you in a situation where if you had said nothing, you may not have been on a management track? Like, you have to actually kind of be deliberate about how you proceed with your career.
Yeah, my experience is that you tend to get the title once you're doing the job already. And management is weird because there's a lot of information you get when you get the title, and really your job does fundamentally change. But the more of it you can figure out how to do beforehand, the better you'll be when you finally do get the role. And your manager may or may not be a good manager. And even if they are a good manager, they can only help you if you make it clear where you're trying to go.
Well, that's particularly interesting because you created a peer mentorship group. How did you go about that? Like, who influenced you and who were your role models? And it's not necessarily even at work. Like, you can do quite a bit of that kind of peer mentoring outside of work.
Yeah, so I definitely have an informal peer mentoring group. That's a lot of my friends from college and friends from past jobs where we'll call each other up randomly. That type of informal peer mentoring is especially useful when you're having one of those days where your self-confidence is just way below where you know it should be. It's good to have those pep talks and someone to bounce ideas off of that you know is completely safe. In terms of who influenced me, I had a manager when I worked at Chef who's showed me how much more managers can be. He really went out of his way to set up active trainings for the people under him, goals. He was not content with people merely performing at a high level. Everyone had to be moving and changing and growing, even if it was deepening their skills in what they were already doing. And he was willing to put in the work and hold people accountable. And I found that to be really inspirational.
It's pretty rare to find someone who wants
Yeah.
to, like you said, take that kind of responsibility on outside of his normal duties as a manager.
I feel like that is the job of a manager, right? Your job as a manager is to help everyone that you're working with be their best professional self, right? So to give them the resources, and one of those resources is accountability, to grow as quickly as they can and to help them be aware of the ways they can grow.
That's an excellent way of phrasing that. Can you think of a situation where you're growing up that made you think that you might want to be a leader of a team, or perhaps you were foisted into a situation?
No, when I was younger, I didn't have the confidence to be a leader. For example, I was really interested in emergency medicine in college even, and I didn't take any classes or train to be that because I wasn't willing to take the responsibility to be accountable for someone else's life. And similarly, I wasn't at that point willing to be accountable for someone else's professional development. It wasn't until I got a little bit older and realized that if I didn't do it, it wasn't going to get done, that I got to a point where I was willing to take those risks with other people's well-being.
That is certainly a massive responsibility when you are in a life-saving situation. And it's not necessarily the same, I suppose, as a day-to-day job. However, in your specific company, Call 9, you do have that responsibility, right? Because you are connecting and creating software for life-saving situations. So it's an interesting kind of evolution of how you've come to this stage.
Indeed. There's nothing more meaningful than getting up each morning and being able to create a system that will save lives and change how healthcare is done across the country. But it's also a tremendous responsibility.
So, what would you say your management style is now? You've read a lot of books. You've now had a number of different kind of roles and seen how different teams work. How do you define your own style?
Yeah, the phrase servant management definitely resonated with me when I first ran into it, but I feel like it's more than that. I feel like it is my job to approach each person in front of me as an individual, figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are, what shape they are, and where they want to go, and what that delta is, and work with their own intrinsic motivation and provide the accountability and resources to help them get there and help them realize who they should pair with and what their weaknesses are and how to overcome them. Not necessarily how to fix them in themselves, but how to be willing to reach out to others who complement themselves well. And that's at the individual level. And then at the team level, there's kind of the same thing going on of giving the team the right amount of autonomy and the right amount of accountability that they can continuously ratchet up their level and provide more value to the company and the world. Because fundamentally, the individuals on a team are going to grow the quickest if the entire company is growing, which means the team has to be effective.
Yeah, that is a serious challenge, I think, for most teams, especially as companies become more and more stressed and pressured to transform and become that company that can perform, not just against their competitors, but then also in the industry itself and always be that company that's coming out with something interesting and new. So I suppose coming from a startup situation, you're looking at scaling very quickly.
Yeah, the company, I've been at Call 9 now for 3 months, and it's not the same company I joined. This is the incredibly fast rate of change, and anyone who's not learning, like you have to learn to succeed. So it makes the job of a manager even more important to continuously give that path to learning at the team level and the individual level.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? How do you encourage people to learn? Do you give them options to go to conferences or book budgets, or really you kind of just play it out depending on the person and their personality and what they may need?
Yeah, it's going to depend a lot on the person. Everything from finding external advisors to setting up meetings with them with internal people to, this is not all things I've necessarily done at Call 9. This is throughout my career. Setting up mentoring groups, setting up paper reading groups, setting up book groups, helping them find a Coursera class or online class that matches a skill they need to gain, setting up trainings for them myself and helping them go through them and giving them homework assignments for more junior people mostly. Asking people to look for soft skills too, right? Asking people to solve a certain problem in the organization or identify a problem and then bring it to me and we're going to work through solving it. So it's a combination of external resources, coaching people through problems, kind of mentoring people through problems. And the distinction there is putting some of my own advice in, and also just forcing people to set goals and ask questions to cause them to step back and look at things from a broader perspective.
So this is sort of a great segue into this next question, which is how you encourage other people to become leaders and managers. So through this mentoring, you must see certain traits that would help someone get on that path.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know where people want to go. And people often be very embarrassed about it, right? Sometimes people will joke about the role that they're trying to get to. I had an individual contributor that would joke with his wife about not CEO yet. So I held him to that. I'm like, that's where you want to go, isn't it? You want to be a CEO. Okay, here's the paths to go there. Here are the skills you're going to need. On a more specific level, going from an individual contributor to a leader, you can do so much leading without the official role. Managers in an organization are usually letting things slip through intentionally all the time because they don't have the bandwidth to handle them. So there's a huge array of valuable projects that people can work on. So helping people see those, helping them find the projects they're interested in that will match their skills, and supporting them through trying those things can be really valuable, as well as giving them the right books and asking the right questions to help shape their philosophy.
And did your former mentor finally become a CEO? Or maybe he's still on that path?
He wasn't my former mentor. He was my former mentee. He's a tech lead at this point. So he's excited about that.
Yeah, so he's on the way. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any particular memorable experiences with leaders that you learned from? You specifically mentioned your former colleague at Chef, but perhaps there's other people or maybe just particular books or thinkers or ideas that you've seen along the way that have stuck with you.
Yeah, it's small things from various places. I think I read First Break All the Rules when I was really young in my career and internalized it to the point where when I read it later as a manager, I was like, well, of course. I think that's a useful book to read early. Five Dysfunctions of a Team is really useful. I really like Camille's book, The Manager's Path, to help people realize what their boss does. That same manager I told you about at Chef pointed out to me that you can't be effective at your job unless you know what your boss's job is. Because fundamentally, the reason we form companies is because we're trying to solve problems that are bigger than any one person can solve. And so we have to all be pushing in the same direction for that to really be effective. So understanding your boss's job really helps you be better at yours.
I really like that because that makes sense. 'Cause you're all rowing in the same direction. So if everyone is sort of the captain of their small team and all the captains are captains and they get together, it's sort of this trickle down.
Exactly. And that's why it's your responsibility wherever you are in an organization to make sure you understand the larger vision and how your work ties into that, and to hold your manager accountable to providing that clarity for you.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Jess. That's a fantastic point to end on. I really appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Sure thing.